We can speak now to Barry Donadio, who is a former US Secret Service officer who joins us from the outskirts of Washington. Thank you very much indeed for joining us once again on this channel. Barry, I can see from your feed on Twitter, or X as it's now known, that you don't seem to be in favor of a US military invasion of Greenland. Do you think that's a likely possibility at this stage?
Thanks for having me on your show again. And I really don't think so, but there is a strategic importance here. As all the NATO allies agree, Greenland itself is an extremely strategic position. And now with the new intelligence coming out and new AI coming out, I should say, on Greenland and global warming exposing new land masses that are a favor to China and Russia, all the more reason why the strategic importance of Greenland has skyrocketed. President Trump is correct in everything he is saying. However, many people don't agree with how he might be going about doing it. But he's seeing intelligence that the rest of us are not seeing. So I wonder if the situation is even more critical than we are all aware of, which is making him say, we basically have to take this island or it's a matter of survival for the Western Hemisphere.
Right, but a lot of other people are saying, you know, US ownership of Greenland isn't actually necessary to meet those US national security objectives. I mean, surely those objectives can be met through existing arrangements, such as the NATO alliance and other military deals that already exist, because there is already a US military presence on Greenland.
And I agree with you, and I'm certainly not an ambassador or an attorney, but the way I'm reading the 1951 agreements with Greenland and Denmark, the United States basically has carte blanche. We can put as many troops as we feel, or as many bases as we wish. We would articulate it, of course, to Denmark, and I believe they would gracefully allow us to do as we please if we feel the national security of the United States is threatened, and they have done that in the past. The only thing that I would say in defense of President Trump is it doesn't say anything about compensation. So if you look at the history, it seems that the United States has really ensured the security of Greenland literally since World War II and during World War II without any compensation. And we know President Trump has hit NATO very hard on being able to they have to pay for their own security. It's an impossibility for the United States to pay for the entire European security. So I'm hoping overall this is a big ploy by the president to get attention to the security issues at Greenland and get all of the NATO countries to contribute to Greenland's overall security. I think if he's very into getting the ownership of Greenland, maybe in some small way, maybe some kind of sovereignty over our bases that we potentially may have there in the future. I know other commentators have beat me to the punch and said what I was thinking in the first place, that something like Gibraltar with the UK and Cyprus, where the UK actually owns the land there and it is sovereign territory. Maybe that's in the cards here. Maybe that's in the negotiation. But it is a crisis, if you will, right now. And I'm only concerned of losing our allies and the NATO alliance. And the United States has to tread very carefully here. So I think both sides are right in a certain situation here. President Trump is correct in saying that it is an extreme strategic location that needs to be protected at all costs, at all times, by all NATO members. And of course, NATO doesn't like how we're going about doing it. So both sides are right in their own hemispheres.
Right, I think you're right. And I think a lot of US allies are scratching their heads, perhaps today more than in previous days. I mean, has there been any pushback domestically there in the United States? Particularly in your community, in the intel community, in the defense community, people saying, we don't like the way things are heading here?
It has been unusually quiet. I'm a member of the Republican Party, and I can tell you, I don't show up at a Republican event and everybody is cheering on to invade Greenland. That's just simply not happening. I'm not seeing that. I think most Republicans find this to be basically, we weren't ready to hear this one. We were expecting something else. However, in defense of President Trump, again, he's probably looking at some intelligence that I don't have access to. He probably knows something that the rest of us don't know. And I would encourage the president, because he is a president of transparency, he should release what he's seeing so others can understand it better that are not so much into the education of military strategy. But it is a tough situation. And if it is what the president is saying, which I do believe it is, I do believe that Greenland could be in the aims of Russia and China to try to take over. And once they're there, good luck getting rid of them once they're there. So, you know, I guess the next few months here, we're going to tell the larger story of what's going to be happening.
Yeah, but I mean, that is sort of what NATO is for, given that Greenland falls under the NATO umbrella and has that US military presence. But I mean, all the while, you mentioned the Russia threat, but I mean, Russia seems to be loving this, enjoying the disarray in this long-standing transatlantic alliance, the humiliation of European leaders, Europe being described as weak. I mean, some might say this chapter is in itself a massive gift to President Putin.
And I imagine you're correct at that. He's probably laughing in the Kremlin. But this is not the first time we've bumped heads with NATO allies. There was a time years back, and I don't even remember what it was over, to be honest, but we had a bumping of heads with France, and we no longer called French fries French fries. They called them American fries until a couple of months went by, and then we made up. So that's where we're at with that. But overall, yes, Putin is going to exploit any crack in the foundation of the alliance, and we are opponents, so he will do that, and so will China. It is important for NATO and the United States to stay ironclad together. We can have disagreements, and I think a lot of these disagreements should stay behind closed doors and out of the earshot of President Putin.
Yeah, indeed. Russian officials are having a field day, calling Greenland a colonial conquest and saying that President Trump would go down in history if he took control. I mean, it does sound like Moscow is rather encouraging President Trump. I don't know what you make of that.
You know, there's one thing that we can also think of and where we're at today, and we may not even know it, but let's take ourselves back to World War II, where American generals had armies going through countries all over Europe, occupying. They did not ask permission because they were basically liberating and occupying lands to prevent the Nazis from being able to occupy it. And I question, are we at that point with AI being so incredibly dangerous and the nuclear age right now being so dangerous and the movement of troops and what's going on in Ukraine? Are we at a point now where we're in a quasi-warlike scenario where we need to go and move troops and take land to prevent opponents from taking it to win over us? Are we there yet? And I guess that question is yet to be answered.
So where do you see things heading? Would you say we're looking at the beginnings of just a messy trade war, outright military confrontation, or would you err on the side of a brokered solution?
I hope a messy trade war at best, and I hope it doesn't go beyond that. If the United States decides to do some kind of military action against another NATO country, we could be defending against an Article 5 action from all the other NATO countries. And I know people take that lightly, and they say that could never happen. But those agreements are legally binding. If Denmark calls for the assistance under Article 5, they're under invasion. What are the other countries to do? So I guess that's yet to be seen, too. A lot of question marks there. And I think everybody is just saying to themselves, well, it'll never get to that point. I hope it never does. And if I were in front of the president right now, I'd be advising him not to do this. There's got to be another approach, a much softer approach of trying to even a shared sovereignty or maybe parts of Greenland, because even if we were to take all of Greenland, I don't really think we would need all of it. We would probably need parts of Greenland at best. So your guess is as good as mine with that one.
Okay, now I gather you've also been keeping a very close eye on developments in Iran, and you've served in the Middle East. I'd like to ask you, since this story has gone a little bit quiet in the news cycle, and it is obviously an extremely fast-moving news cycle these days, do you think that the fact that the United States has done nothing on this occasion militarily, that it means it probably won't?
I would say that the United States is probably getting assets in the area to make a strong strike. Ask me that question again when the Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier gets in the region. Then we'll talk about if the United States is going to do something. I think they will. I think the decision had been made way back during the 12-day war when the United States took out the nuclear facilities of the Iranian regime. I think they tried to negotiate with Iran, and it's just been calculated that this current Iranian regime, it's just time. It's time to get the exiled prince of Iran back in power and try to give the people of Iran some kind of a democratic solution to their overall financial problems. Their money is almost worthless. People can't buy things. They're rioting in the streets. And there are thousands of protesters dead. And if they're protesting and they're unarmed and they're being shot by the state, that's, obviously a big problem. That is something that Trump has warned about. And last I heard, Trump said, if one protester dies via the action of the current Iranian regime, he is going to act. Now we're in the thousands. So I think the wheels are in motion. I think we are just getting military assets closer to the region. And the president will make a decision when they get there. And I think you'll see a regime change.
And do you think, Barry, that's why, the eyes of the world media are all trained on Greenland and other parts of the world? Do you think that's part of the calculation, that perhaps President Trump does have it in mind to take military action with regards to Iran, and that he's benefiting from some other distractions, shall we call them, in the world news cycle that will add to the surprise element of that attack? Do you think there's some logic in that?
I, however, just think that this is the most important thing on President Trump's desk right now. I don't think it's a shell game where he's trying to distract Iran. I mean, they are at high alert. They are expecting us to attack, obviously. They're warning that they're going to hit Israel as well as our assets in the Middle East. So, no, I don't think it's a mirage that he's trying to pull. I think he means every word he says about Greenland. And, it is a valid point. At the end of the day, no matter who wins this argument, Greenland has to be protected by tenfold to protect it from Russia and China and the influence of Russia and China. And no deals for Russia and China to get in their civilian workforce and work in Greenland and do anything whatsoever.
All right. Barry Donadio, former U.S. Secret Service officer, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us.
Thank you.
Well, we can speak now to Mark Fox, who is a retired U.S. Navy Vice Admiral who served as the Deputy Commander of the U.S. Central Command. He joins us today from Washington. Admiral Fox, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Al Arabiya English. Could I just start by asking you, why do you think Greenland is suddenly so central to U.S. national security?
I'm not sure that it is. This administration has some really unpredictable actions, and that's one of them that I don't understand, to be honest.
Can you see an argument that Greenland is more important today than it was perhaps at the height of the Cold War?
Well, certainly this administration, President Trump, has focused much more attention in this hemisphere. You see his actions in the Caribbean, and I perceive that that's part of his plan, is to focus more here on the issues here in this hemisphere. But truthfully, I don't completely understand it myself.
I think perhaps you're of the view, as some of the people we've spoken to have been, that U.S. ownership of Greenland isn't actually necessary to secure American interests, and that those interests can be met through NATO and through existing military deals that exist between Washington and Greenland. Is that where you're coming from?
Yeah, I would, Denmark's a member of NATO, and we have a long-standing alliance, and so I feel like our national security needs can be met, through a collaborative, collective security agreement.
Such as the one we already have, i.e. NATO.
Right.
What do you think a US attempt to seize Greenland by force, were it to come to that, would do to NATO?
I think it would be unwise, and it would be unfortunate if that were to happen.
What would that mean? Would that mean the end of NATO?
I don't think necessarily. I was in a NATO assignment right at the end of the Cold War, and there was a collective search for the soul of NATO, of why are we here, after the Soviet threat had receded. And so there's a long relationship here amongst like-minded people that's endured. So I think NATO is healthy. It should be something that continues, and that we all participate in it. You know, one of President Trump's objections, I think, has been that the feeling that the nations in NATO have kind of sheltered underneath an American financial umbrella, if you will. And so in that regard, I think one of the things that has happened is NATO nations are now contributing more towards their own collective security than they did before. So he's a transactional leader, and I think he takes steps that are completely unconventional and unorthodox, and sometimes comes up with things that no one else would have considered.
How dangerous do you think the situation is that we're in right now? Because clearly tempers are fraying. We've seen some fairly unusual postings on social media, and various traditional allies of the United States have been either humiliated or otherwise somehow singled out for some pretty harsh words. Is there a risk of a miscalculation? Is there a risk that perhaps there could be someone lashing out, and that this could really escalate into a dangerous situation?
I think that there are adults in all the rooms. I think that there's an opportunity for people to breathe through their nose and think about the wisest and most judicious way ahead. So I don't see it as a dangerous situation. I know emotions can be high, but at the end of the day, those of us who share so many values and so much history over the years, that should not be something that would threaten that.
One of the messages we're hearing from Washington is that if the United States doesn't take control of Greenland, then Russia or China will. And in the midst of all of this, Russia seems to be rather enjoying what's happening. I mean, it looks like disarray in the transatlantic alliance. European leaders are being singled out and humiliated. Europe is being described as weak. I mean, one might argue that this whole episode is a wonderful gift to President Putin.
I couldn't disagree with that. I think anytime there is public rancor amongst friends, it creates opportunities for real enemies to try to exploit that.
Okay. Let's just also examine the situation in Iran, which is obviously another flashpoint in the world right now. It seems to have gone a little bit quiet on the Iranian front, and I'm just wondering why you think that is, and do you think that symbolizes perhaps a return to what I suppose we could call business as usual?
Well, I think the Iranian people have been very, very poorly served by their leadership and by the theocracy and the domination of their society, with the IRGC, and the complete incompetence and corruption that the Iranian leadership has demonstrated. So I think the Iranian people, it's up to them to figure this out. I think also that tyrants in power will do whatever it takes for them to stay in power. And most of the time, they use horrible means of killing innocent people to do that. But there's, I would have never have guessed 18 months ago that the Bashar al-Assad regime in Syria would have fallen, collapsed from within. And just because it seems like it's an intractable problem, I think that the people of Iran might find a way. I don't know. I hope so.
How vulnerable would you say the leadership in Tehran is looking at this particular moment, given that Israel had a series of intelligence coups in the last 18 months or so? Many of them can be traced back to Iran and demonstrate a compromised country.
I think that the actions, especially of the 12-day war back in June, have shaken Iranian leadership to the core. And I think also it's proven to the Iranian people that they are not doing a good job of preparing them to, Iran is not a member of the family of nations. They're an outcast. Their economy is absolutely, it's in horrible shape. They don't have fresh water. They've exploited and been poor stewards of their own resources. And so I think if you look around the world at the Iranian diaspora, if you will, the people who have immigrated from Iran into the United States or around the world, they are very clever, they are very hardworking, they are smart, and the Iranian people deserve better.
And just lastly, Admiral Fox, would you say that the fact that President Trump has not so far decided on a military path with regards to Iran on this particular occasion, that it means that idea is probably off the table, at least for the foreseeable future?
Well, as I told you before, I think President Trump is one of the most unpredictable and unorthodox leaders in the world today. And for me to say he would or would not do a certain thing, I was very pleased when he authorized the use of the B-2s against the nuclear facilities in Iran. I thought that that was exactly the right thing to do. I personally never appreciated how much of a burden it was on my own heart that I fully expected Iran to have a nuclear program. And if it's within conventional weapons capability, we and with the Israelis did really good work to prevent an Iranian nuclear program from, going forward. So President Trump is, he keeps his own counsel, and he's a unconventional, unorthodox, and unpredictable leader.
Okay, Mark Fox, retired U.S. Navy Vice Admiral. Thank you very much indeed for your time, sir.
You're welcome.